This is one of the most accessible and classic dishes in African cuisine, dating back to at least the 15th century. Because it is so old, it's evolved. You can be sure that tomatoes were not part of this original recipe, and these days it's very common to include curry powder from British Indian cuisine, which is obviously not original either. What I've done here is try to retain those elements that made it a star dish that spread in popularity across Africa without any of the shortcuts or extreme outside influences that now haunt the modern versions of this dish.
Begin by assembling all your ingredients. I have the meats in the refrigerator staying cold. I've got a can of tomatoes. These are Italian tomatoes, whole in juice. This is the grated ginger. I've got fresh nutmeg, whole nutmeg that is, and I'm going to grate this just before I use it. A couple cloves of garlic. There's the onion, dried red serrano chili, fresh red serrano chili, the dried thyme, and the rice. The next thing I did is I dumped those tomatoes out into a bowl so that when I'm cooking them I can separate them from the juice like this with a slotted spoon, because we want to cook these tomatoes separately, and also we don't need all of them. Okay, the pan is on a high heat. You know that I rarely use a full-on maximum heat. This time I'm doing it. It's one of the secrets of this dish for the authenticity. They cook this over a roaring open fire, and they singe the bottom of it. It's part of the cooking style. This is often the case in certain societies, Africa and also in South America, Mexico, Oaxaca. Burning is actually part of the food preparation. So, you know the saying, you never get a second chance to make a first impression? That's the same thing here. You want this oil freaking hot. To prevent spattering. Yeah, just start breaking it up a little bit. This is part steam and part smoke, because it is starting to burn already. You know, it's only been in there about a minute now. Now I'm going to add a little bit of the juice. We're going to keep cooking it, kind of like when you make the tomato pasta sauce in my recipe. Okay, I haven't stirred it. As you can see, as you can smell, if you could only smell this, it's starting to pick up some burnt overtones in the smell, and part of it sticking to the bottom of the pan. So now I'm going to reduce the heat all the way from maximum down to medium, about 5, and I'm going to add those onions, which I chopped up while this was going on. We're going to use the moisture that's going to come out of these onions to deglaze the pan. You're going to pick up the spawn that's in the bottom from the tomatoes. You're going to use this, kind of calm it down a little bit first. Now, it's been about 3 minutes now on a medium heat. You can see there's nothing more sticking to the bottom of the pan. That's good. But we want to soften these onions more. So we're going to keep stirring these on the medium heat. Let it go for a little bit longer. It's been 5 minutes now. I'm going to add that salt to it. And coarsely chopped garlic. And fresh ginger. Now I'm going to reduce the heat from medium. I'm going to reduce it down even further to 3. 1 to 10, it's on a 3. This is almost like making a masala in Indian cuisine. In fact, sometimes they take this and they make it up to this point where you have the tomato pre-cooked for restaurants that are serving this, and they just make a big pot of this and keep it in the fridge, and then that way when an order comes in they just work forward from this point, because this is the most time-consuming part of the recipe. But we're making it all in one step here. So the key here, it's on 3. We're going to be very patient with this. We're going to cook it a little bit longer here. Now, after 5 minutes of this, I've got this dried red chili. I'm just going to crumble it into there. I'm avoiding putting the stem in though. the stem does not go in. The rest of it goes in. As well as the brown sugar. And we're going to stir this around, let it cook for a little bit. After 2 more minutes, I'm adding the fresh chili to this. And we're going to stir this for 1 more minute. Okay, now here's where you add either the crawfish stock, which is what I'm actually using. I actually have crawfish stock on hand. Or you use shrimp stock, or failing that you use water. But you'll get the most intriguing depth of flavor if you can use crawfish stock. Yes, it's expensive and it's a pain to make. I know. One of those things that separates restaurant cooking from home cooking. You're free to do it though. If you can make crawfish stock and use it, go ahead. Also going to add the thyme at this point, and the nutmeg, which I grated during the time I was waiting for this to cook. Now I'm going to cook this. It's still, heat was on 3. Now I'm going to increase the heat back up to 5. It's back up to medium again. And we're going to cook this for a couple of minutes together. Okay, it's been 2 minutes. I'm increasing the heat all the way back up to maximum. Again, this is the secret to the dish. You have to use high heat. Do not be afraid at certain points in the cooking. This is one of them. Maximum heat. As soon as it starts warming up, I'm going to add the ground beef to it. And we're going to cook this on high heat to really cook this beef. It's been 4 minutes now. It's starting to get pretty scorchy on the bottom. I'm going to add the first ladle of this beef stock. Okay, maybe a ladle and a half. Just to make sure that it's not actually burning on the bottom. Okay, we've picked up all the fond off the bottom. I'm not sure you can see that or not. And now I'm going to add the rice. The rice will absorb more moisture and it will make it more prone to burning. So you got to really watch it now. It's still on maximum heat. We're really putting the spurs to this. Again, the secret to this recipe, high heat. We want to make an impression on this. The key here, the art of this, is getting it to the point where it's almost burning, and then you keep bringing it back with a little bit of the stock. It's a little bit like making a risotto, an Italian risotto, except that in a risotto you never actually let it get close to the burning point. You let it dry out a little bit, but you don't go this far. This, you're going to go even further, and thus there's more skill involved in this, dare I say, than making a risotto, because you can go from it not being very tasty to being burnt in a matter of 30 or 40 seconds. So you really have to keep an eye on this. It doesn't need constant stirring the way a risotto does, but it does need constant watching. Keep repeating this process. Now when you've added a little bit more than half of the stock, now is the time to add the ham or the Canadian bacon in this case. And we continue this just a little bit more. Get to where we've added about 3/4 of the stock. Okay, it's been a few more minutes. 3/4 of the stock has been added, and this is starting to get dry yet again. Now I'm going to add a little bit more dried thyme. The rest of the stock, last quarter of it, and I'm going to put a lid on it, and I'm going to turn the heat way down from high all the way down to 2. Now during this period, just because it's covered doesn't mean you don't take the lid off and stir it around once in a while. And make sure it's not completely sticking to the bottom and burning. It's been 10 minutes now. Lid off, a little stir. Going to add the 1/4 teaspoon finely ground black pepper. And the shrimp or crawfish tails if you have them. Those are more difficult to obtain right now, so I'm going to go with shrimp. Now we cook it same heat, very low, number 2 on 1 to 10 with no lid on it, because we're trying to evaporate it and we're trying to dry it out a little bit now. But it's almost done. We don't want to overcook the shrimp.
If you like my videos, look for my cookbook, now available through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other internet bookseller sites. Also look for my cocktail book, Cocktails of the South Pacific and Beyond, Advanced Mixology, available through Amazon online.